Welcome to Data Viz Daily. I'm Kevin McGinley, and just to let you know, I'm suffering from a little bit of a cold, so if my voice sounds a little off or you hear an occasional cough, apologize for that. But today I wanted to introduce you to not a new tool. I'm sure, I don't know exactly how long the tool has been around for, but a tool that I just recently discovered that I think that has a lot of interesting sort of relationships, correlations to Oracle data visualization, as well as the Trifacta product and Open Refine products, which I've shown recently on Data Viz Daily. That is a combination of sort of a data wrangling tool and a visualization tool. But one thing that's really interesting about Exploratory is that it's built entirely on top of the R platform. Now, if you're not familiar with R is basically a programming language and platform for you to do both visualizations as well as statistical analysis with data wrangling with data. And it's a very popular platform for people in data science and advanced analytics to use. In fact, a lot of people coming out of college are, sort of learning R now instead of learning other capabilities like SQL and SAS. So exploratory is definitely an interesting proposition here in that we can basically have access to R without actually having to know how to program in R. And what I thought I would walk you through here so that you could see a little bit about how this works and how this all comes together is to take one of the data sets that I've worked with in the past, the 2016 presidential general election debates, take that data set and kind of walk you through some of the wrangling that I've done in prior Data Viz Daily episodes and kind of show you what that's all about using Exploratory. So like Trifacta, Exploratory actually takes all the different transformations that you do and kind of puts them in script fashion, and it kind of queues them up stacks them on top of each other, if you will. So what's nice about this is you can actually kind of walk through all the different transformations and how the data changes as you go from one to the other. So that's what I'm going to kind of walk you through. So I'm starting with here the source file, the Excel file, which just had 4 columns. It had the line number of the person who was speaking, the text that they spoke, and the date of the debate in which they spoke it in. And you can see here that it just, like Trifacta, like Data Viz, Oracle Data Visualization, when you turn on the sort of profiling mode, you get a sense of, what the min, max, median, average was and where sort of the distribution of the different, values are. So that's the sort of setup here, and I'm in summary mode. We'll actually switch over to Viz mode in a little bit, but just to kind of show you what's possible here, switch to table mode, and this allows you to see the data in a pretty standard format. I like keeping it in summary mode, and so let's kind of walk through some of the transformations then. So the first one that I'm doing, they have this function called mutate, which is basically a way of creating something new from something existing. Is what it boils down to for the most part. And what that involves here is I'm actually taking this date field and turning it into a character field. So you see here the data type changed. We started here, it was an actual date field, and now I'm switching it to a character field. Still represented in date form, so that I can use it that way, but you'll see why I'm transforming it here to a character as we go a little bit further down. The first example is actually then taking this date field and doing something called a recode. Recode, if you're familiar with the sort of Oracle platform, is like a cast. And that basically allows us to take any text string and turn it into another text string. So I'm turning each of these date fields into a sort of label for the debate. So the President 1, President 2, President 3 represents the different presidential debates. Immediately you can see how many lines per debate there were, as well as the vice presidential debate as well. So we're using the recode feature here pretty much like a standard cast, except you don't need to include the where and then and end and else keywords like you do within the cast. So now we've got sort of a label for all the different debates. And the next thing that I'm going to do is actually take the line number and turn it into a character. And the reason that I'm doing that is because the line numbers are actually per debate instance. So in this instance, the date itself, you can see here line 1 appears 4 times. That's because each of the debates has a first line that is spoken, usually by the moderator. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn that into a character and then use this string padding function here. This is why I turned it into a character, to actually pad all of my single digits with zeros. So you can see here I'm doing a left. I'm making sure that it's a width of 3, so any line number that was already 3 won't get padded, and I'm padding with a 0. So that was a function that was available to me if line number was a character string. The other benefit of line number being a character string is that I can create a new sequence field. This sequence field is basically a concatenation of the date in a character string with the line number, removing the dash from the dates. So this effectively creates a sequence for me so that I can now look at any of the debates and know what lines came in what order. And then what I can do is there's a sort function that can make sure that those get put in all the right orders based on these string numbers here. And with that, I can then change that to a numeric and perform some math on it to get a prior sequence number. This will be useful to me that if I want to look at, well, what line was said or who spoke before someone else spoke. So what lines were said right before any other line, and then correspondingly I can do a next as well. So I can now start to, by having these numbers in here, look at what came right before a particular line, what came right after a particular line, and do some analysis that way. The next thing that I'm going to use here is there's this awesome feature called get sentiment of text. So you can apply this to a particular text field, and it's going to apply a sentiment score, around 0 being sort of a neutral sentiment. So anything that is a positive number is a positive sentiment. Anything that's a negative number is a negative sentiment. So every line that was uttered, it's going to use the get sentiment R function to figure out what was the sentiment of that particular text. I'll then add in a line count so that I can have something later that allows me to count how many lines per whatever grouping I want to apply that to. And then if you'll remember, when I used this data set before in DataViz Daily, I actually took all the different candidates and grouped them into various buckets. So we've got Republican, moderator, Democrat, and then I left the sort of general candidates audience in question alone and unchanged. So that's how I've changed my data set, using a variety of different functions. Now, if you're wondering how I did some of this, a lot of it comes down to things like using this mutate button. It allows me to pull up a function list. I can show the documentation for functions. I can choose functions based on whether it's a text function, whether it's a date function, and then ultimately I have a sort of built-in way to pull up any one of these functions. Now again, all of these are R based, so everything that's in here, there's a corresponding R library that gets called and executed as part of this, which kind of begs the question, well, can you get to the R itself? And the answer is absolutely. So if I come here and I scroll on this little contextual menu here, you can see I can generate the R script, and this is the R script that will execute to do all the steps up until this particular step. So you can see here that I'm doing all kinds of things that I showed you with the various mutate and arrange. Here are all the libraries that are getting called. Here's the text sentiment value here, or call that I'm making. So this is something that I could literally copy this, run it within RStudio, and it would actually sort of generate this same data set. So the last part of this to show is the sort of visualization capability. So if I switch over to Viz mode, just a simple example of what I can do here. Now this isn't quite as powerful as Oracle Data Visualization or other data visualization tools, but it's nice that I've sort of got all of these capabilities built in together. And one thing that I'm going to do here, I've got your standard pivot table, bar, line, area, etc. I'm going to switch to a box plot because actually that's not in Oracle Data Visualization. And let's do a box plot by speaker. And I'm going to use that text sentiment just to see what interesting things that we can do with that. And let's color that by the speaker type column that I created. And what that allows us to see here, if we sort of expand this out, is we now get sort of the, we get the top and bottom ranges for each particular speaker. We get the sort of range in which they vary in from a sentiment score perspective in terms of the sort of most common areas. That's what you see here within the sort of thicker bars within the box plot. And so in general, you can see that both Clinton and Kaine tended to have a sort of higher, well actually Clinton had a higher sentiment score than Trump. Pence tended to have a higher sentiment score than Kaine. What's actually kind of interesting about that is Kaine's sort of box here is very short in comparison to Trump, Pence, and Clinton. So he was pretty concentrated, and if you watch that debate, he did have a pretty, sort of common attack line that had a very specific tone to it that kind of, in a way, got redundant by the end of the debate and got a little bit annoying, if you will. Whereas, Clinton in her debates tended to be a lot more sort of positive and hopeful than Trump, which tended to take, he tended to take a little bit more of a negative, tone, which is not uncommon for a challenger to sort of, basically say the status quo sucks. So this is a great way of just kind of showing, what that sort of text sentiment came out to when applied to each line and then sort of averaged across all the different debates and all the times that these particular characters spoke. So that's, a good showing of what the sort of capabilities of Exploratory are. Now what's nice about this is, in addition to generating the R script like you saw me do, I can actually save this as a CSV file. So, yes, I can do some visualizations right in the tool. No, it's not quite as powerful as some of the other visualization tools out there. It can certainly get the job done when you're really focused on, just kind of showing, key visualizations within the data. But what I can do is take this and save it out as a CSV file and bring this into other tools like Oracle Data Visualization. So I'll take this file next time and bring it into Oracle Data Visualization so that you can see it in there. So for today's episode of Data Viz Daily, I'm Kevin McGinley. Thanks for watching.